Hello, everyone, and welcome to day one of Summer Learning Week 2021, Discover STEM and Soar. We're going to get started in just a minute. While we're waiting, if you want to share with us in the chat box where you're joining us from, say hello. Again, hello, everyone. Welcome to day one of Summer Learning Week. We're saying hello in the chat box right now. Before we get started, just a couple instructions. The audience lines are muted. Feel free to chat with one another in the chat box. But if you have questions for our panelists, please put those into the Q&A box so we'll be sure to see them and ask and answer those live. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Aaron Dworkin. Aaron.
Oh, well, thank you, Leslie, and thank you, everyone. And hopefully we'll see a few more folks joining us. Really excited to celebrate Summer Learning Week. It's our first day, and we have a great theme today around the importance of promoting STEM, and especially in our summer programs and partners. We also have a great lineup, and we're really grateful to Nintendo, who you'll hear about their Game Builder Garage new game that they have that they want to share with all of us. And they've just been a great supporter both of NSLA and our field and this events and lots of other projects going forward. This is really exciting. If we go to the next slide, Leslie. Again, thank you. Each day of Summer Learning Week, it's our chance to kind of lift up and highlight and celebrate great programs and resources and leaders that are doing so much for millions of students across the country. And this is, we want to give a chance to listen and learn from folks that you're going to hear from them. And what we get to do at NSLA is work with thousands of partners across the country, from school districts to nonprofits to other government youth serving agencies and even corporations. We're all working hard together to make sure that this summer specifically and the next summers coming ahead are used wisely as we use these new federal dollars that are coming, and we respond and help kids and families respond to what they may have missed from COVID, but also get ready for the coming school year. We go to the next slide, Leslie. And so again, NSLA been around for more than 25 years. We are very focused on using the summer to close the achievement and opportunity gaps which grow over the summer months. And obviously using STEM is one of the keys. Next slide. And I always like to say this, and for anyone who's heard, I apologize. But one of the things that's great about summer is it's this chance to fight the inequities in education. We think the summer months are the most inequitable time for young people in all of education, but it's also the most entrepreneurial time in education, and creates so many opportunities, as you're going to hear from our panelists and the other resources. But it's also a time for improvement, not just for students, but for staff. And most summer programs double up as staff training. It's a time to be innovative, as we know, using STEM, especially in the programs you're going to hear about. Time to integrate in terms of breaking down the artificial silos of education, getting all the different partners who always care about serving the same kids and getting them to work together. So it's a chance to do that. And then it's a chance to have an impact collectively at the national level. You're going to hear from the U.S. Department of Education in a few seconds, also at the state level, and then at the program and at the personal level. And what's great about summer programs is the impact is both immediate. Whatever you learn right now and you remember it, but it's also lasting. And 25 years from now, the students in your programs will say, hey, I learned this skill and I met this mentor and I'm in this career path because of what I did as a summer program as a young person. Next slide. So there's a lot of great resources. Again, Nintendo has been a huge partner in helping us create a major new resource that's been launched called discoversummer.org. The Secretary of Education is going to be airing public service announcements and on the radio, and also there'll be billboards across the country trying to drive folks to this website so people can find new programs, find new resources. But with that, I'd like to just turn it over to a great partner, Melissa Moritz from the U.S. Department of Education, who has some greetings for all of us. Melissa.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Erin. And on behalf of the U.S. Department of Ed, it is just my pleasure to welcome you to National Summer Learning Week. I am so thrilled to be with you all today to kick off this incredible week to spotlight summer learning and enrichment opportunities all across the country. First of all, I want to say a huge thank you to NSLA, without whom this event and Summer Learning Week and so many other things that we all do in this space would not be possible. And also thank you to each and every one of you who are doing incredible work to support students and their families across the nation to ensure they have the opportunities they deserve, not only this summer, but previous summers. And I know we'll all be doing this work for a long time to come. As you all know, more than anyone, now more than ever, high quality summer learning and enrichment is critical. Summer learning opportunities provide the safe, healthy, and engaging places for students to explore their passions, reconnect to their peers and adults in the community, and develop critical skills that, as Erin said, will impact them for many years to come. And as a former middle school science teacher, I'm just so thrilled to be here today, joining you for the session about STEM opportunities. We know that the pandemic has had disproportionate impacts in communities across the country, and that many folks on this call stepped up when others were closed to ensure that school kept going, that learning continued. And we're so excited to see the new heights that you've all been able to reach. And at the department, we're so committed to working alongside each and every one of you to ensure that every student and every educator, every out-of-school time provider has the resources they need to recover and build back better. We have a historic opportunity in front of us with the resources provided by the American Rescue Plan. We have the opportunity to double down on evidence-based strategies and also to try new things. And as Erin said, innovate. To ensure that we are finding new ways to ensure students and their families have what they need to recover from COVID-19. And as we try these new things and expand proven approaches, we have to continue to learn with and from each other, which is why I'm so excited to be here with you today to kick off Summer Learning Week. And I'm so thrilled that you'll have opportunities throughout the week to learn from one another. If there is ever anything the department or I can do to support you or your work or your students or your educators, feel free to reach out directly. I will certainly pop my email directly into the chat. I just want to say a huge thank you for inviting me. Thank you for the work that you're doing. And most of all, happy Summer Learning Week. Erin, back to you.
Thank you so much, Melissa. And thank you for you and your team's amazing leadership and support for all of us. It's hugely appreciated. So now we have this really we have two parts to this webinar. We're gonna first hear from some friends from Nintendo, JC Rodrigo, a product marketing manager, and Bill Vodka, who is a director of instructional technology at the Mohonasen Central School District in upstate New York. And they're gonna be talking about this new resource and new game that Nintendo's created, an education game to teach kids how to create their own video games and coding skills and everything else. So we thought it'd be fun to hear from them and see a demo. So I'll turn it over to you all, JC and Bill.
Thanks a lot. Wow. Okay, it looks like my camera's kind of on. Hopefully everyone can hear me all right. What's it called? So yeah, thanks for the introduction. Thank you everyone for having us here. So without further ado, I'm going to try and push some content in a moment. So let me see if I can get this going here. Should take just a second. And please let me know if you can see that content and at the same time hear my voice. But if anything, just go ahead and drop it in chat and I'll make sure I kind of adjust the game audio levels. And hopefully everything is working fine so far. So again, thank you for having me very much. So what I wanted to actually show everyone today is, thank you, appreciate that. We're talking about Nintendo Switch. And if you haven't heard of what Nintendo Switch system is, it is a game system that switches from an at-home game console to an on-the-go game console. So you can just kind of start up a game while you're at your TV, pull it out, and you can just keep going. Now, traditionally, of course, the game console has a bunch of games, obviously. But one of the things that we've been working on for quite some time is actually working on a game what if it was a game about making video games? And this game that you're seeing right now is called Game Builder Garage, and I'll just go and try to, have that image in your head. So Game Builder Garage is a game about making video games, right? It's basically self-guided interactive lessons that are curated and created by the minds at Nintendo. So all the Nintendo games you know and love, they're the same people that actually created this entire, learn how to make your own games program. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna show you real quick. And these are all self-guided tutorials. I'm just gonna kind of scroll to very first step 1. I'm going to show you essentially how the game works. There is a bouncing ball in the middle of your screen. That is basically your teacher. And you know, your teacher is basically, his name is Bob, and he guides you through all of the lessons. And the game that we're going to make, or at least this is the beginning of making, is basically a game of tag. If one of the taggers tags the other one, they lose. Or if the other tagger gets destroyed by an object, the person that's running or escaping wins. Pretty simple concept. But what you're doing right now is you're actually seeing the background is the game screen. This is what the game looks like. When you, Game Builder Garage, and the reason why I really am interested in this is because you have to build everything from scratch yourself. But even if you have zero knowledge of video games, or you don't make video games, or even if you just have, you barely play any video games, you will still be able to walk away with a completed game. So in the bottom right corner, there's this button that actually switches from the current game screen, so the world is empty, to the programming screen. And this is where most of the magic happens. So we're going to have to call up a couple of things. Now, to create an object, you simply select here, Object, Characters, and then we're going to go to a person. And we're going to summon a person. And the way we've actually kind of characterized these things is the person, they're called nodon. Each nodon represents something, a person, it could be an input. And by learning about these mysterious creatures called nodon that live inside your Nintendo Switch system, you can put them together, connect them together to create logic and create a game. So if I switch back to the game screen in real time, there's the person I just summoned. So kids will be able to see kind of a real-time, relationship between I did something in the programming and there's something here on the screen. Bob is also telling us to move the person with the left stick now, so I'm moving the left stick on my left thumb. Camera's not, but that's fine too. And the person isn't moving because there's basically a nodon for everything. So I'm going to switch back to programming, and I have to figure out what kind of input I need to make the person move. And so I have to go to Input, Stick Movement. Notice how everything is guided. You can do no wrong. And you press left stick, and I want specifically a left-right motion on the left stick. And there's another character. So by associating a character and their personality, kids and first-time game enthusiasts will be able to kind of understand that this is how your games work. This is how Mario moves. This is how, this is all very similar. And this is all have real-world application as well. So to connect these two, I'm just going to move this left-right. There's a little kind of, connection here. And I'm going to connect the port. If I move left-right, it moves the person left and right. So if I switch back to the game screen, and now if I use my left thumb with the left Joy-Con stick, it will actually move and now my kind of person can come to life. So in a sense, that is a very short snippet of what it's like. And eventually we'll get to making platforms, another player, blah, 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 until we actually create the whole tag game. But of course, I do want to move on because I want to actually show you something else. Now, I'd like to actually call on Mr. Vodka because this is really cool. And, over the weekend, I downloaded one of Mr. Vodka's games. And, Bill and I have been talking a little bit, and he talked about this a while ago, and it's called Vodka Spelling Training. Now, the reason what you're looking at right now is a way for people to, once you know what you're doing with the nodon, you can create whatever you want. So as soon as Mr. Vodka saw this, he said, I'm going to make a game that has something to do with spelling. So while I'm playing this game, actually, Bill, would you like to kind of talk a bit about how your game works? And I'll go ahead and play it.
Thank you so much, JC. Welcome to Vodka's Spelling Training, a game that I've been working on, well, at least in my head, for years. But it's simply a spelling game where you have to select the correct word. And you have a misspelled word and a correct spelled word. And if you get it in the correct time, you get a happy little emote. And then it will let you know that you got 3 out of 4 wrong. And then if you get the first 4 words right, it goes to level 2, where it's going to be a little bit faster now. And JC, get this first one wrong. Let's see what happens. Phone. Oh no. And you have to restart at that level. So as a first grade, I'm a former first grade teacher, now the director of instructional technology for our district. But when I was a first grade teacher, we would always do these spelling practice homework lists where you give them the word and they'd have to write it 3 times to practice the spelling. And I always thought, wouldn't it be easy or fun if I could create a game, something similar like this, where I could have the students practice in a more fun and engaging way. And when I got to meet the director of Nintendo Labo, Director Sakaguchi, and I asked him if it was possible, he originally said, not yet, but it will be. And then Game Builder Garage came out, and it's only been out for a month, but it came out in the last month of school here in upstate New York, when students, as you know, are checked out. They don't really have that full focus, are very excited for summer vacation, but they have picked this up and have dove in so hard. We have these summer camps using Google Classroom where we are going lesson by lesson, and kids are sharing their work with each other and asking each other questions. It's really, really fun and exciting.
You know, I'll say this. I am incredibly impressed by your design of this game, because I believe what you're seeing now are a bunch of different node-on. Remember, we saw the person node-on, we saw the button node-on, and what you're seeing now is that there's actually dozens of different types of node-on. Every artwork, every word you custom made, every not flag, the logic that connects, what happens when you win, what happens when you lose. All of this is taught to you by the game. So tell me, I'm very curious, what was your experience in just kind of creating this game, Bill? Because this is amazing.
I don't know programming at all. I know like the very basics. I know how to code, and I teach first graders how to code by being like up, right, left, and that's how you get your character over there. But this does such a phenomenal job at teaching the very basic mechanics, and then will even lead you into a wrong path. And it'll say, how come when you did this didn't work? And it will walk you through that whole thinking process. So when I went through this, I said, okay, where would the reading equivalent be for this game? And I found that after about a month of testing, it's perfect for a third grade on-level reader. But that doesn't mean that it's limited to only third grade. I've had first grade students that were enriched that picked it up and flew with it because of how it's guided. There is no audio that's being read out loud, but it will walk you through every single step, and it does get intense near the end. But what I love about this is the differentiation that you can do within a single game. I can truly hit your common core third grade subjects with all the different things that I want to hit, the different strategies and the different techniques, and then move it all the way to a 12th grade lesson and get the same exact detail. So for example, for this game, we were talking about the words coming down. So I could show the students how to make the sprites and how to do that, and how gravity works, and that when it falls down, you have to find the rate of gravity. So we talk about the numbers and we compare the different numbers, and it is all within here. So if you actually just click on, say, timer there, JC, the 1.5, and you'll get this little gear. Each node-on has these settings where you can truly go in, and you'll be able to, for this, how many seconds are going in, how many seconds does it go for out long. You'll have different spots where you want to change the x-axis, the y-axis, the z-axis, trying to connect two 3D models with one another. There is so much that you can go into. Even with this simple game, the spelling game, you could talk about the differences in how the words fall and the rate of falling from level 1 to level 3. It's so exciting to see how the kids are picking this up, and they don't even know that they're learning. We're just playing games. Their imaginations are running wild. They're asking questions like, how did you do this? They are able to download the game and see this code, just like what JC did. This is my exact game. And the purpose for why I wanted to make this game was so that I could give any other first grade teacher that wants to make or to play this game the ability to do so. So if you downloaded this game code, just like JC did, all you have to do is to go into where the text node-ons are, and you're going to change the word right in there. And that's all you have to do. JC's a master, he's already nailed it. So right there, he would go there, he hits white. You can see that box is with WITE. When you go into the settings, you change it up, and that way each week you can change the word list and share it to all your friends that are educators across the land. And it's really exciting how it's getting students across the board invested.
Yeah, I'm. It's funny that you mentioned that, because there is an aspect of sharing, right? I know that you probably I know for me, I would love to collaborate with people like on games. And I know that what you can do with sharing is you can actually make even like a beginner program. That's something that's, this is a very complex, but also not terribly complex, but complex enough where I'd like help. And I know that I would be sending, I'd probably make some kind of template or some kind of base code and send it to someone. For example, like you, Bill, you probably make some changes, you can send it back to me. But there's also ways to share it. So if, for example, if Bill was in a classroom with his students, he could also kind of share this one program with everyone in the room at once. And there's multiple ways to do that very quickly. So yeah.
That's something that we're doing actually right now. So even though the school is no longer in session, I created a summer camp for any student that had a Nintendo Switch and a copy of Game Builder Garage. They're able to join our Google Classroom. And our Google Classroom is broken up into 7 lessons originally, which are the 7 levels, the 7 games that you're going to build. And I have my YouTube channel set up so that I play the lesson. I talk it all out. So say a student is having difficulty reading the word, they are directed to my YouTube video and able to hear me speak out the entire dialogue. And then they make that game as they play it, and they have to send the code in as the assignment for that first lesson. Then once we get through all 7, we're able to go and create your own games, and we have our own showcase. So that's coming up at the end of August, our Game Builder Garage showcase, where all of our students are going to just put up their code or their different codes, and they can play it from each other's houses. And we're not even meeting in person. But when we do come back in September, like, it's going to be a whole new level of like kids at the playground talking about coding. And how did you get this guy to do this? What kind of connection? What node-on do you need? What kind of logic? Is it an and? Is it a not node-on? It's so deep what you can really do with all of this.
Awesome. And I think that was that's really good information. It's really, really good to hear that people are using this. We always saw Game Builder Garage as a chance to really step into the education space, simply because there is a little bit of science and math in all of our video games. And by able to kind of showing that to people and having kids and first-time game builders, even if you're not that much into video games, being able to just enjoy it and kind of go through it and understand, like, hey, this is all literally science and math to solve a problem. It's literally the definition of engineering. So very big on, I'm glad that people are playing it. I'm glad that you've enjoyed it very much, Bill. And I think that's about all we have time for today, because I do want to also get to maybe a bit of Q&A. I think that may be in the plans. So again, thank you so much for having, for joining me, Bill, and everyone here, and me too. So thank you so much, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you, Bill. Thank you, JC. We have a couple questions. And if people want to add some questions into the Q&A box, they can. But I think we saw one from Adam Morris. If you see that, that was one I just saw. Leslie, can you read them out? I'm just looking for it.
Yes, Adam Morris with how can we collaborate on creating a game for students?
Yeah.
All right,
Sure.
So that is exactly what we're doing right now. We are collaborating through our LMS, Google Classroom, and we use that every day during school, during quarantine, so that the students are used to it. You could use any type of chat. So like if you just have, I use Facebook. I have a Facebook group for Game Builder Garage community for all the adults, so that when I have a question on how do I get this to go faster, or how do I get this node on to turn around that way, that's how I connect and we collaborate. But just by giving a code, it's like a 12-digit code that you just send, and then they would go back and forth on sending the code. I made some changes, I'll send you that code, you download it, say some changes, and just go back and forth that way.
Great. Is there anything you're doing with parents around this, Bill? Have parents been interested in learning how to use the game or working with their kids on it?
Absolutely. So that's where kind of our Facebook group has come into play, where because the parents don't have access to our Google Classroom, our domain, it's private just for the students, but we found the parents are enjoying it sometimes even more than the kids. And they're like, oh, I've had this game in my head for years. Let's see if I can figure it out. I just had a friend create the Luca game where you're playing as a little guy on a moped, and you're going down the streets trying to see all the sights. It's so exciting to see the kids get excited from the parents getting excited from the kids, and just the fight over the Nintendo Switch and who's going to play with it.
Great. Thank you. Do we have any other questions? Anything in the box? I don't know if you want to put your information, maybe, Bill, at least if people have questions, you know, they can reach out to you. I'm not sure, it's up to you, JC, also, but, you know, I think we want to make sure people learn about this. And for those who are not following this live, but download, you know, watch later, this is another great resource, and we're really grateful to the folks at Nintendo for creating it and offering it, but also to folks like you, Bill, who are coming up with ways to use it and share it out. And this is how we engage students. And I love that you're doing it during the summer too. So thank you so much. What maybe we'll do now. So thank you, Nintendo. Bill, you're welcome to stick around. Everyone's welcome. Please stay. But we have a great panel of STEM educators working with young people. And you're going to hear from our moderator first, Jisoo Song, who's a senior policy advisor with the International Society for Technology and Education, very famously known as ISTE, and a great partner to NSLA. And then he has with him a few terrific real program leaders, youth experts who are promoting STEM this summer. So I'll turn it over to you, Jisoo.
And find my unmute button. I was like, where's my mouse? Anyways, thanks, Aaron. As Aaron said, my name is Jisoo Song. I'm the Senior Policy Advisor at ISTE. And for those of you that are unfamiliar, we're a nonprofit organization that helps educators solve tough problems in education with technology. We're an organization that's sort of less focused on the digital tools and resources themselves, but more about the transformative learning approaches that are made possible through the technology. And you may know ISTE from our annual ISTE conference. We just had our most recent 2021 virtual ISTE Live conference that had about 13,000 educators from 50 states and 88 countries joining us. And you may have also heard about ISTE through our ISTE standards, which sort of sets a vision and framework for how the technology can be used for transformative teaching and learning. All states have used those standards in some way in the past, and we have around 24 states that have adopted the latest generation of the ISTE standards. And I'm actually really glad that we had the Nintendo demo just now, because empowering learners is a huge core tenet of the ISTE standards. ISTE also provides opportunities for educators to develop their abilities to implement practices that are grounded in the ISTE standards through our professional development programs, like our ISTE certification and Summer Learning Academy. And finally, the work that I'm involved in as the senior policy advisor for the organization, we advocate at the federal and state levels to ensure that there's an ecosystem/funding that allows for the effective use of technology. For example, we just worked with the California State Board of Education and the California Department of Education to develop some guidance on strategies that educators can use to make the use of technology for learning a lot more equitable and engaging. So I'll put that link in the chat for those of you that are interested in taking a look at that resource after this webinar. So that's a little bit about myself and ISTE, so I'll transition a little bit to the panel. So you can see there's a lot of overlap between our discussion topic, STEM, and the areas of work that ISTE is involved in. The use of technology for learning really is at an inflection point right now. A lot more students have access to the internet and a device as a result of the critical investments that we've made during the pandemic. So the question now is moving towards how do we ensure that those technologies become sustainably used to build students' skills, students' agencies for their futures, right? And Aaron joined us for a session during the ISTE conference a couple of weeks ago to talk about this issue. And the consensus among our panelists was that this really is the time to be bold when it comes to leveraging innovative learning models that are empowered through technology. Finally, before ISTE, I had a chance to work for the Office of Ed Tech at the U.S. Department of Ed, and did a little bit of research showing how discrepancies in the use of technology for learning between active and passive learning can really be a factor towards inequitable access to STEM career fields. So I'm really excited to kick off this discussion with folks that are leading the charge on this issue. We have Rob Moore, Tech Center Manager at the Digital Harbor Foundation, and also Jayme Cellitioci, Creativity and Innovation Strategist at Camp Invention. So thanks, Rob and Jayme, for joining us today. If you both could just briefly introduce yourselves and answer, how are you preparing students for the STEM workforce of tomorrow through your program? So maybe we start with Rob and then go to Jayme.
Awesome. Well, my name is Rob Moore. I am the Tech Center Manager here at Digital Harbor Foundation here in Baltimore, Maryland. I am a former computer science teacher. I love STEM. I love to learn. This is truly my passion. What we're doing here at Digital Harbor, we're bridging this gap. We call this digital divide. But I call it just a gap, right? So I get that divide word out my head and just think about, I want to close that gap. And what we're doing here is providing STEM programming, science, technology, engineering, and I must add the arts and mathematics inside of that. But we're just trying to find unique ways to introduce young people to science and engineering in ways that they never thought of before. Most of it is through projects. It's never the sage on the stage anymore. It's more of the students doing the work with their hands, actually on tools and equipment that they'll use in the future. So they're working on pro MacBooks. They're working on with real 3D printers. They're working with some of the tools that they will be using once they get out into their career. So here at Digital Harbor, we're introducing young people to technology by way of workshops, classes, and things like that.
Rob, you kicked me off with the perfect quote there, because I'm with the National Inventors Hall of Fame, and Camp Invention is our flagship program. But one of our inductees, Garrett Brown, who invented the Steadicam and the Skycam, that's exactly what he says, is find the gap. And so that's the sort of the perfect approach to an inventive mindset. And with Camp Invention, we design experiences for summertime, after school, preschoolers, elementary, middle school. We also have a collegiate inventors competition. And then ultimately, we hope those Camp Invention participants, eventually we can induct one or more of them into the National Inventors Hall of Fame. And our museum is actually at the US Patent and Trademark Office. So we spend a lot of time with our inductees figuring out, really what is critical for kids to learn and understand about STEM. And while, of course, a lot of the hard skills are imperative, when I have an inductee visit a site, they are speaking more to the mindset oftentimes. So they're talking about persistence and creative problem solving. And really, how do you take an idea from being imaginative and novel and useful, which are critical for getting a patent? You have to have novelty and not be non-obvious and useful in order to get a utility or a design patent. And so, how do you take those ideas and then develop them, prototype them, be okay with failure along the way and some ambiguity, and then how do you bring that to market? So really empowering kids to understand that their ideas have value.
Thank you both. And I'm really glad that you all brought up the topic of closing the gap and all types of gaps, right? The digital divide became really apparent during the pandemic, data showing, and stories showing families that are either unconnected or underconnected, so the digital divide became a lot more apparent. But when we were at the US Department of Ed and here at ISTE, we often talk about that second gap, that digital use divide, right? Once that access problem is somewhat alleviated, how do we make sure that students are really at the center of these learning programs, making sure we empower them to use the technology in ways that personalizes their own learning, sets their own learning goals and things like that. So I'm really glad that you are all at the forefront of addressing that second digital use divide issue. So with that in mind, diving deeper into the technology side of things, what role did technology play in your program during the pandemic the last year or so? And how are things going to be different going forward with those lessons kind of learned?
I'll jump in on that one. So the pandemic turned everything virtual, right? So our world of in-person learning, our world of gaining rapport through being in person and in front of young people, that kind of changed. So we moved everything to virtual. First thing that came to mind was access to equipment, right? We kind of take for granted that everyone has a computer. But maybe every home has one computer. But what if the home that has one computer has 3 children that are school age, right? So now we have to figure out ways to get more computers to those homes. So for the first couple weeks of our pandemic shutdown, we were scrambling to get computers and tablets and things like that to homes that didn't have it. So once that was alleviated, right? We're like maybe a month into this pandemic now. Now the kids finally have computers and equipment to use and go virtual with. Now it's about instilling these habits that they didn't have before, right? So they didn't have a habit of waking up and logging on. That wasn't the way school was going, you know. So usually they wake up, they get dressed, they're moving, you know what I mean? They're getting themselves ready. This was a total different. This was just totally different for them. The agenda, their morning agendas just totally got obliterated. And with that, managers, tech coaches, teachers, parents, we had to figure out a way to still get the kids motivated and ready to go, ready to learn, but just in a new way, in a new method, and how to embrace this new method. So with going virtual was our main thing that we had to do. Then once we realized virtual was the only way, and then getting equipment to those that needed equipment, and then it was actually instilling those good work habits. I call them virtual work habits. So we were trying to instill great virtual work habits, and it's a new level of professionalism, right? So we talk about classroom behavior and things like that. Some of it doesn't directly correlate to virtual. So you have to reiterate certain things about how do we act in a virtual environment and things like that. So the main focus for us during this pandemic, like I said, was getting people access to equipment. And then once they had access, it was getting them acclimated and building those habits.
Absolutely. When I look back to the very beginning of when we started to quickly adapt to all of these different needs, personalization just shot straight to the top. And I think that's a wonderful thing in many ways, and in terms of looking at, okay, what are some of the great lessons to take forward at this time? That's certainly one of them. And so we had many programs that did in some fashion continue to run in person. And so we needed to keep building our traditional model, but then of course we also were developing virtual programming, and then making sure that even in hybrid scenarios that everything worked out, so that if a child started their Invention in person on Monday and Tuesday, and then testing showed that everyone had to go virtual on Wednesday, they needed to bring their Invention materials with them. And if they were already attached to that DC motor and LED to put on their prototype, that it didn't get lost and they could just transfer that. So it really, forced us to stretch in ways that we were already doing, but it was a major catalyst. And then the aspect of making sure that our children without digital access did not get left out of the mix, creating self-guided kits. And so we got into the zone of creating new books and hands-on activities, because it's interesting, as soon as you start to use a digital platform, there is the notion that some of the engagement is between you and the computer. And we wanted the computer to just be that vehicle. And so we wanted to make sure that the kids were building and manipulating materials and getting that hands-on STEM experience. But we know the World Economic Forum just put out a report that roughly a quarter of adults with annual household incomes below 30,000 don't have a smartphone. 43% of adults on lower incomes do not have home broadband services, and 41% don't have a desktop or laptop computer. And so, we have to really look at this and figure out, okay, what does that mean as we're trying to provide equitable experiences?
Thank you both. and Rob alluded to this a little bit, the environment really is totally different when you're teaching in an online setting, right? You can't just what we've said at ISTE is that you can't just replicate what you did in a face-to-face environment and expect the same outcomes to happen. And Rob, you mentioned that you needed to develop students' habits of mind. It's not just about like, here's your equipment, go and run with it. It was really about making sure that they're continuing to be engaged and developing those habits of mind. And the silver lining here, what we're hearing at ISTE is the educators have learned how to tackle those new challenges and will take those strategies back to their blended or face-to-face classrooms come August, September. So that's sort of the silver lining that I've been sort of grasping hold of in the last couple of months. The fact that we've learned so many new things about how technology can be sort of involved in empowering students to be sort of leaders of their own learning, their peers' learning, and that those strategies won't be lost after the pandemic. So, you know, Jayme, you cited some really jarring figures from the World Economic Forum around the digital divide. Rob, you told us a few stories about your kids and their families not having computers and equipment. So that actually leads nicely into my other question. You know, the digital divide really still is an issue. How have you sort of specifically navigated this challenge over the past year? And, you know, how does it impact your students? If there's a story or two that comes to mind, I would love to know. Yeah.
Sorry, I was muted. So Digital Harbor Foundation, what we've done is we've started a program called the Lending Library. So we fashion ourselves as a real community center. So back in the day, you think of a rec center where, you know, there's open gym where folks come in and they can do crafts and play basketball and dodgeball and all those things. We've turned it around to where we've turned a rec center into a tech center, right? So now we're a community organization where folks can come in, instead of having open gym, now they can get on the computer, right? So now we have open labs where they can get on game labs, they can get on different computers and different start their own basic projects on their own. But what we did specifically during this time was our lending library. Our lending library is basically a kind of what it is. It's a technology equipment library where we actually lend out to people in the community. So parents, adults, children, if you're in the community and you need equipment, we've put out the call that you can come to Digital Harbor Foundation and we can lend you actual computer equipment the same way as a library would lend you a book. So if you need a printer, you got a print job at home you want to do, we have printers here that we can lend you. You bring them back just like regular. We also offer that same program to our educators as well. Yep. So educators who may not have, say, a 3D printer in their class can come to us, get 3D printer training, and then lend a printer from us, have it in their class, and be able to facilitate in their class with rented or lended equipment. So that lending library was our biggest thing that we did during COVID. We just ramped up the lending library. We sent out calls to folks who had, spare computers around, who didn't know what to do with them. We were going and picking those up. We were refurbishing those computers, and in the same day, putting it in the hands of a kid or in the hands of an adult looking for a job and things like that. Yep.
That's great. I was going to say, if any of that technology does break down, you may want to get some safety goggles and screwdrivers, and you can download on invent.org. I'll put that in the chat here. We have a nice take apart activity that we have as part of our blog. But on invent.org, under our blog, are a lot of free resources for hands-on STEM activities that can be done at home or at sites. And then I'm going to put here, we have Camp Invention Connect still running across the nation. You can plug in your zip code and see if there are any in-person camps that are running this summer near you. So we have hundreds of sites around the country, coast to coast, and there's very likely a site near you that's running camp, and it's now part of the National Summer Learning Portal. So you also want to check that out as well. But for virtual programming, we are still offering what's called Camp Invention Connect, where the kit will be sent straight to your home and you can set up your own innovator workshop. We have a cool pegboard where you can put all of your tools, put your tool belt on, your maker mat. And then one of the programs that's running this summer is called Open Mic. And if, let's see here, if you can listen carefully.
Hi, this is Jim West. I invented the Electrode Microphone inside this device. You can use it to voice your ideas.
So that is, so every child's getting this microphone as part of Camp Invention Connect's Open Mic and the in-person program. And then when we take off, oh, you have to find the magic spot with your virtual environment. When you take off the top, there is the Electrode Microphone inside. And this is the benefit of getting to work with our National Inventors Hall of Fame inductees, is that I can Zoom Jim West and ask for his advice. And he made us a recording, basically using his invention, the Electrode Microphone, to record a message to the kids, letting them know that he can't wait to hear their ideas. And when I tell you that that's a sincere message, he expects me to email him back and let him know what the kids are doing and creating and how they are using his invention to iterate and then progress the useful arts and sciences like our Constitution tells us.
It's really great to hear about these innovative strategies that you've taken on to ensure learning can continue. Rob with the Lending Library program, and Jayme with the free resources that you mentioned, those at-home STEM activities. And I apologize, my internet connection dropped off for a little bit, so if my screen was frozen, hopefully you all can still hear me. But moving into my other question, innovative strategies are great, new things to try out, but they're lacking if they're inequitable, right? So I want to get to the equity side of things. How do we involve diverse student populations into the world of STEM and close gaps that currently exist in STEM career fields? And I'll open that question up to the both of you.
Jayme, you go first.
Okay, well, we were doing a good back and forth there. Yeah. Well, first and foremost, there's really wonderful research. I think of a report by Bell and Chetty that talks about who becomes an inventor in America. And it just shows how critical it is that children are seeing in inventors and scientists and people with whom they can resonate and look up to, so that they can imagine themselves and head down these different pathways. So I think we have to make sure that we are knowing, finding, telling the stories of a diverse array of individuals that are in these fields, including some of those historical stories that have not been told. And so that's a critical piece of the puzzle. And then we have, we don't have to guess what's going on because the data tells us what's going on. And so we can move into solution finding. And I think that it takes a variety of approaches and really working directly with community members and not making assumptions about what the needs are, because there's barriers and limitations that are different in every community. So I would say that doing your homework is a key piece of the puzzle, and then designing solutions that using a design thinking, empathy in particular, and designing solutions that are meeting true needs and not assumed needs. Rob, what would?
Yeah, I totally agree. Wow. The reason why I wanted you to go first, because this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. It's one of the reasons why I'm in this position, honestly. To be totally honest, I want more people to look like me in this position. And that's why I do the job that I do. So having, being really, really close to students, really close to parents, one of the things that I'm realizing is that, in programming or in nonprofits or in community work, sometimes we have an approach where we want to build for and not build with, right? So when you're talking about community, my approach is to build with, and our approach that we're trying to do here at Digital Harbor is to build with the community. So it's a lot of surveys that get kind of annoying at first, but we're trying to get a temperature of what our constituents and what our stakeholders are actually wanting, right? What are the things that they're clamoring for that they feel like they don't have? What are opportunities that they want that they feel like they can't get? So one of the things that we're doing at Digital Harbor is reaching back out to those communities of disadvantage. So there's social economic disadvantages all throughout Baltimore. But it just so happened to be where we are located physically. Our neighborhood is not necessarily one of the most disadvantaged neighborhoods in Baltimore. So with that being the case, transportation to us has become a huge issue. So when you talked about issues for the disadvantaged, we can build it all we want, right? But if they have no pathway to us, if they have no like literal pathway, a road, right? If they have no transportation to us, right? If they don't have no transportation to that tech center, if they don't have any transportation to that internship, right? That tech internship, that becomes an issue. So what I've realized is that one of the things that's stopping, I mean, this is just one issue, but one of the things that is kind of blocking or impeding some young people that are in disadvantaged neighborhoods and disadvantaged situations, sometimes it's just transportation. And broadly speaking, it's a support system, right? So we can build all the programming that we want. But if there's no support system, right? What about that mom who wants to go back to school or wants to go to school and get her CompTIA certification, but she has a child, right? So how do we build support around her where she can still get that certification and have childcare? And that's what a community center is about. I would love to be able to have childcare, and in the next room over, she's over there busting out that CompTIA certification, right? That would be awesome in my eyes. And that's where we're trying to roll. That's the trajectory that we're headed with Digital Harbor.
Yeah, that point about building with the community, I feel like it's so important. You did mention that, collecting that data and through surveys and interviews, it's the first step, but without that data, without that information, it's impossible to build with the community, right? And only through those experiences can you sort of uncover the issues that you can't really see up front, like the transportation issues, like the family needs that you mentioned. And those are the steps that we need to be taking to build that community approach. It's a great point, Rob, you made again, that, the programming can be as relevant and engaging as possible, but when you haven't solved all the other issues that prevent the student or the family from accessing your program in the first place, then there are inequitable conditions there. So that's a point that I'll definitely take back from this conversation. I just have a couple of minutes left, so I'll sort of close out with this final question. The audience for this conversation is a lot of folks that are involved in summer programming. If you have any final resources, advice that you want folks to know about, or general tips around how can summer programs, what can they be doing more to promote STEM education in general, would love to know, and close out this conversation with that. So I'll again open it up if anyone wants to begin.
A statistic that's coming to mind for me is that 95% of our science learning happens outside of the formal education classroom. And that's both a responsibility and an opportunity. And so in really thinking about whether it's museums, aquariums, out of school time programs, tech centers, incubators, all of these places and spaces, we are part of a big field, and not everyone knows that they are part of something bigger in that sense. And so sometimes we call it informal science learning, but free choice learning is another term that's used. And I think we have a lot of big work to do as a nation to understand this umbrella of free choice learning or informal science learning, and how we can all collaborate together, because it's a lot of the same issues that are keeping us up at night thinking about how can we solve this, and there's so many people that have pushed through and found creative solutions. So I think the more that we can understand the opportunities at hand, and really how can we support each other and leverage these platforms, so that ultimately in many ways we can de-shame science and STEM not knowing and learning. There's a lot of people that feel very much outside of science and STEM. They think it is this other, and that they don't quite have access to it for a lot of different reasons. So I think first and foremost, our work that we can do together, and a powerful challenge for our summer learning cohort and network here, is to figure out how do we make sure that everyone feels, good, okay, and safe about the process of science learning and the so what of it.
I think that's awesome, Jayme. You hit a point that really resonates with me, and it's young people not feeling like this is something that they can gravitate to, right? One of the reasons why I wear my hat back and wear a t-shirt, because I want to make science look cool, right? So when young people come into me and say, hey, Mr. Rob, I'm giving high fives and I'm making science look cool. I'm making math look cool, right? I'm disguising math. They don't even know that they're doing math, right? So one of the things that I'm thinking that a lot of youth programs can do, is they have to make learning cool again. They have to make learning fun again. And that's not to say that we have to gamify everything either, because there's certain things that need to be kind of said straight, right? Like 1 + 1 is 2. You can't gamify that, right? But there's certain ways, techniques, and methods that are proven to be outdated, right? And as young people educators, we have to stay present to what young people are gravitating to, what they're listening to, what they're consuming. And I wanted to get on that. I had a whole nother talk about consumption versus creativity. Because one of the things that we're trying to instill in young people here at Digital Harbor is not just to become a consumer of content, but to become a creator of content. And we're going to try to give you the tools, and we're going to give you a hodgepodge of tools that you can use and put in your tool bag to make you a better creator, right? Because when you're a better creator, now you can find useful ways to fend for yourself and to fend for your family, right? You can find ways to become entrepreneurial. You can find ways to better yourself and maybe become career driven in some sort of way. But the idea of it for me is to really use tech as that great equalizer. And if other programs that maybe not STEM focused, if they can have parts of their program that's STEM enrichment, maybe a STEM enrichment hour, something like that, I think we can go a long way in closing that digital gap.
Thank you both. I see Aaron just hopped on, which means I am out of time. So I'll pass it back to you, Aaron, to close us out. Thank you both so much for giving us your knowledge. Yeah.
That was a very inspiring hour. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Rob, Jisoo, Jayme. Thank you also to JC and Bill and Nintendo. And I'll take that last line Rob just said. How do we get our students to go from being consumers of technology and content to being the creators of technology and content? And that, I think, ties between all of us, from the Nintendo game we just were learning, Game Builder Garage, to what Jayme's doing, Camp Invention, what you're doing, Digital Harbor, what ISTE obviously is promoting throughout the country. So listen, this was terrific. We really appreciate it. I learned a lot. I hope a lot of people learn about what is happening, what could happen, what's possible in summer learning and across our school system and education system. We just are right now, we have this great opportunity to do even more with young people. We had a couple last pieces of information we just wanted to share with people. We are at NSLA, one of our great gifts that we have is that we're a great convener of lots of different folks like you've heard here today. And we're going to be going for it and trying to have our national conference in person in Washington, D.C. Hope everyone will be as safe as possible, but we'd love you all to come. So please sign up, and there's early bird rates, and we're going to have great discussions and panels with some of the folks you've heard here. We also have a year-round professional summer learning community around STEM and health career specific programs that get together quarterly, and they're going to be meeting at this conference. So we hope, again, if you're interested in joining that smaller cohort to continue this conversation we had today, we hope you'll join. And then if you're looking to plan for the future, and we have so much government funding from the federal to the state down to the local school districts, and people have the resources now to be creative and take a breath and think about what they want to do. Our planning guide is called Summer Starts in September. And that's because we don't want summer programs to be an afterthought and something, oh, you found a few extra dollars, quick, let's throw together a program. We want this to be built into the year-round planning of every district, every group, thinking about how to serve young people. And so we hope that as we get through this summer, we could start back up in the fall, and we have a whole consulting team and field consultants and resources to just help anybody who wants to take their program to the next level and reach more students. So again, thank you for kicking off Summer Learning Week. Thank you also to Melissa Moritz from the U.S. Department of Education for her support. I want to plug tomorrow. Thank you, Leslie. Tomorrow's theme is called Winning at Health and Wellness, and it's going to be sponsored by Discovery Education, and they're going to be sharing resources. Plus, we have folks from We Coach and also No Kid Hungry about summer meals, and the Alliance for a Healthier Generation. And then we have just every day at this time from 1 to 2 o'clock Eastern, we're going to be having different webinars. And then, as we say, a lot of programs celebrating Summer Learning Week and all their great efforts every day across the country in their programs with children and staff. So thank you everyone for joining us. A great kickoff, a great session. Thank you again, Jisoo, and all our panelists. And we will hopefully see you later this week and talk to you soon. Bye-bye.